To start this video off on the nucleus, I thought I'd first do something a little bit different and take you on a brief tour of my office here at the University of Adelaide. Here's my impressive bookshelf full of anatomy and physiology textbooks. Here's my desk and chair where I read and interpret information from these textbooks. Here's my computer where textbook information is synthesised and used to write new class lessons and prepare new class materials, like for example this video. And here's Super Mario riding Godzilla holding Lego Gandalf, who, well, keep me entertained throughout the day. Most of you are probably now wondering, why is Mario showing us his office when this video is supposed to be about the nucleus? Well, truth be told, when I first sat down in my office to prepare this video, I was kind of stuck for ideas about how to describe the structure and function of the nucleus. But then looking around my office, it dawned on me. In many ways, my office is kind of like a nucleus inside of a cell. Let me explain. My office is the central focal point of my working life, just like the nucleus is the central focal point of a cell. In my office, huge amounts of information are stored in my books and computer. In a cell, all genetic information is stored in DNA molecules inside the nucleus. In my office, stored information is read and used to prepare new class materials. In a cell, information stored in DNA is read and interpreted to make new proteins. And finally, both processes are overseen to ensure that everything goes as planned. In a nucleus, special enzymes detect and repair damaged DNA. And in my office, Godzilla and I check the quality of all class materials, including this video. So the aim of this video is to describe the structure and function of the nucleus. The nucleus is the largest structure inside of a cell, and it's usually located in the centre of the cell. Most cells have just one nucleus, but there are some exceptions. For example, red blood cells have no nucleus. This is to free up space inside of the cell for oxygen-carrying hemoglobin molecules. In contrast, some cells, like skeletal muscle cells, have more than one nucleus. We call these cells multinucleated cells. Multinucleated cells are usually very big cells and have more than one nucleus to govern or control the cell. The nucleus of a non-dividing cell is made of 4 components: chromatin, the nucleolus, the nucleoplasm, and the nuclear envelope. Let's first look at chromatin. Chromatin is a mixture of DNA and special proteins called histones. DNA wraps around histones to form complexes called nucleosomes. In most cells, chromatin isn't evenly distributed throughout the nucleus. Instead, there are large areas of pale staining chromatin called euchromatin, and then clumps of darker staining chromatin called heterochromatin. Euchromatin is pale staining because the DNA in this region is unwound and spread out so that genetic information can be read and proteins can be made. We call these cells active because they're making lots of protein. In contrast, if a nucleus has lots of dark staining heterochromatin, then it means that DNA is tightly packed into clusters and the cell isn't making many proteins. We call these cells inactive or resting cells. Have a look at the following cell nucleus. Does it belong to an active cell or an inactive cell? If you said an active cell, then you'd be correct. Lots of euchromatin is present in this nucleus, meaning that DNA is spread out, genetic information is being read, and proteins are being made. This is the typical appearance of an active cell. Next, let's look at the nucleolus. The nucleolus is a small, dark staining area in the nucleus. The nucleolus is the site of ribosomal RNA or rRNA synthesis. The nucleolus also assembles ribosomal subunits into ribosomes. In another video later on this week, I'll describe how proteins are made and discuss the role of ribosomal RNA in more detail. Next, let's look at the nucleoplasm. The nucleoplasm is basically everything else in the nucleus that isn't chromatin or the nucleolus. Most of the nucleoplasm is composed of a network of very fine filaments, which provide structural support to the nucleus so that it can maintain its shape. And finally, we have the nuclear envelope. The nucleus, just like the cell, is surrounded by a membrane. We call this membrane the nuclear envelope. The nuclear envelope is actually assembled from two membranes, an outer membrane and an inner membrane, with a very thin space in between. There are small pores or holes within the nuclear envelope called nuclear pores. The function of the nuclear pores is to regulate the transport of material between the nucleus and the cytoplasm. So there you have it, an overview of the basic structure and function of the nucleus. Each nuclear component, like each component of my office, has its own specific appearance and function, and can tell us a lot about the state of activity of a cell. Later this week, I'll talk some more about the very important role that the nucleus has in protein production. But first, test your understanding by completing the knowledge test on the nucleus.